Nature has adopted different elements, many of them from a vegetable realm. One of them is the molecules that plants have for their own protection. That means that plants also suffer the attack of viruses, parasites, fungus, and bacteria. Living beings. And these living beings from a vegetable realm, sometimes we do not reflect so much on that, but they also have what I call a proto immune system. That means a very simple immune system that's reflected in the production of specific molecules that we human beings call active. Many of these are many of these active items develop the same activities in the human body. That means the plant defends itself from a molecule, from an acid, from an active um, element that it uses for its protection. But many of these have the same role in the human body, and it's pretty much the study of sciences and this work of biotechnology to identify and to isolate these assets for human use, and especially that they are safe for for human beings, that they have a good effect, but at the same time that they are safe for human beings. One of these amazing assets coming from nature is called wellmune. Wellmune is the name of a patented ingredient that comes from the yeast of beer. Remember that in the production of beer, I don't know if you read about how beer is produced. Specifically, I have experience manufacturing beer at some point. And well, yeast is an important part of the fermentation process of this beverage. Beer is a fermented beverage. Yeast in beer produces in a natural way, and you can see the figure in the right hand side of your screen. It naturally produces perfectly natural substances called beta glucans. Beta glucans are produced by the yeast of beer and by other vegetable species. It's exclusive from the yeast of beer. Fuxion is even thinking of other products, Lagrimas, cappuccino, or tea that have beta glucans not from yeast of beer, but from funguses and from mushrooms or from other um, plants. But yeast of beer have these beta glucans that are perfectly natural. Biotechnology has identified them and has unified them in order to. I want to remind you that it's not free of gluten, but they call it a heroic component because of its properties favoring human immunity. Down there in the right hand side, there's a cap that says clinical research. This ingredient that has GRAS FDA certification, GRAS actually means generally recognized as safe by the FDA, is a certification that's provided by the FDA. This ingredient is a food ingredient generally recognized as safe. It has an important dossier of research of you can see it there, which links it to the health of the respiratory um, ways or airways. It's important because we know that viruses many times express themselves. They proliferate themselves first. They enter and then they proliferate in the respiratory ways. So we need to reinforce those ways. And this natural ingredient called wellmune has a action mechanism, which I'm going to explain to you in a very simple way. I told you that it has some food degree. That means it is consumed as a food, as a food supplements. It is consumed. It is captured by the macrophages of the immune system, as I said at the beginning. And these macrophages break them down into smaller components that sort of it sort of digests it. makes it smaller particles, and those smaller particles go to specific zones of the body where there is maturation of immune cells, specifically some cells called neutrophils, which we talked about at the beginning. What does it say here? That whenever a wellmune fragment joins the neutrophils, these neutrophils increase their capabilities to navigate because they travel on the in the blood. But that navigation, quotes, the speed at which they travel increases, and that improves their action against potentially harmful microorganisms for human body, as viruses, bacteria, and fungus, among others. Why is it interesting? Because it's fully demonstrated, as I said at the beginning, with clinical research, clinical trials. Indeed, there is a large review. I've just brought here three studies which I consider the most appropriate ones out of the many that there exist right now. Indeed, one of them says that Wellmune reduces the risk of health in individuals with high levels of stress. Why is that important to talk about stress? Because stress is the first immunosuppressor or immunosuppressing factor because it affects us physically and psychologically, and that depresses the immune function. That's why these studies have been made in people with high levels of stress because it is known that they are immunosuppressed. And these people have reduced the risk of acquiring respiratory diseases. And this is important in this context because, when we talk about quarantine and prohibitions and good news and bad news about the vaccine, you you can tell that pretty much nobody is free from stress, and this is against us because that weakens our immune system. And there's another research that says that Wellmune it has demonstrated that Wellmune reduces the symptoms of infections of the upper respiratory tract, nose, and larynx larynx. Important in a 90-day study in again in people who were stressed. And then it says that the duration of symptoms of the cold or influenza, this study was carried out in 100 students of medicine during its exams week. That means with a high level of stress. And more recently, this research was published demonstrating that Wellmune reduces up to a 26% the symptoms in respiratory um, channels or ways in human beings. So there's no doubt that Wellmune is an excellent ally of our respiratory channels, the health for our respiratory ways. But besides, there are other ingredients in nature, for example, olivactive, which is nothing different from the extract of the um, olive leaf, is what gives us the olive oil. So the leaves of these plants have a component called European oleoeuropein. Oleoeuropein has demonstrating activity, stimulating again the phagocytosis capacity of neutrophils. That phagocytosis capability or capacity is shown in the graph in the right hand side. What neutrophils do is exactly what you're saying there. They absorb toxins or germs or pathogens that have entered the organism. They absorb them and they digest them as enzymes. In other words, they just eat them as what macrophages actually do. So in other words, there's this synergy work between Wellmune and aloe vera, and obviously and olive active. It's synergy because in Fuxion we do not provide you with isolated ingredients, but an important concept called nutraceutic function. In other words, the junction, the combination, the fusion with several ingredients with a similar activity so that they have a synergy in our organism. So VeraPlast is a herb tea that has a taste of menthol, which has among its most important ingredients, not all of them, because in order to talk about all the ingredients, we will need another meeting. But amongst its ingredients, it's got the extract of aloe vera. And indeed, the role of aloe vera, because aloe vera has inside its sheets, its leaves, it's a thick leaf. It's got several antimicrobial substances. Indeed, there have been some tests with aloe vera in water. The aloe vera extract is diluted in water, and in high dilution, let's say low concentrations, have demonstrated capacity to inhibit even the HIV virus. That means AIDS. So it's got important antimicrobial capacity. Indeed, the gel of aloe vera is used to calm burns, but it is also important because it does not allow burns to be infected or to get infected. And that's a demonstration of the antimicrobial capacity of aloe vera. Well, here we have the extract of aloe vera combined with wellmune beta glucans combined with olive active with oleo European and vitamin C, but vitamin C of a natural source, extracted from a plant, from a fruit called amalaki. And the amalaki, probably most of you know it very well. Amalaki is a blessed fruit. It is said that amalaki for the Indian culture is the source of youth because of the antioxidant power that it has. It's got an important antioxidant capacity, and indeed, amalaki is rich in vitamin C. So here we have this nutraceutic combination, this meeting of very important acids represented by amalaki as a source of antioxidants and activators of the immune system as wellmune and olive active, additional to the extract of aloe vera with a high antimicrobial capacity. I can repeat to you, aloe vera is a herb tea of a daily consumption addressed to help to reinforce the immune system, especially the one of the upper respiratory ways, helping us increase the resistance to these diseases, especially, I repeat myself, the respiratory diseases. It reduces the oxidative stress thanks to the antioxidants contribution and bronchus affection through an ingredient that I haven't mentioned, which is called acetylcysteine. Acetylcysteine is a fluid. Whenever our respiratory ways are invaded by viruses or bacteria, these cells and these ways produce an inflammatory reaction reflected in the production. That's why we get congestion because it produces mucus. It produces mucus to defend itself from the attack of microorganisms, but it affects the respiration, the breathing. So it's an amino acid that helps purify the system so that it releases, so that we can eliminate through our nose, and that way our ways have a good ventilation, a good breathing. So VeraPlus is the ideal product to reinforce the immune response of the respiratory ways and to help them being protected against germs that occasionally could get there.